Fundamentals of Bowling. Taught by champion Lee Jouglard to Fran Miller. This is Sam Levine. To help you to more fun in bowling, let's watch Lee Jouglard take up the fundamentals of splits, spot and line bowling, courtesy and sportsmanship.
We're going to take up a few splits. As you know, splits are pretty rough, even for the professionals. I don't expect you to make them all, but maybe we can make a few of them. Our first split is going to be the 5-6. Now let's take a look at it. You see, the 5-6 can be made in a couple different ways. If you were to hit the 5-pin lightly on the left-hand side, the 5 would hit the 6, thereby making the split. But that is a very, very uncommon way and very difficult to do. Now, there is another way of making the 5-6. This way is the most proper way, the most common way, and that is by using the ball to split the difference right in the middle, hitting both the 5-6 with the ball and making the split. Well, let's try it once on the alley now, with the automatic pin spotter setting up the 5-6. Now, one more thing I'd like to tell you, Fran. I've noticed several times that you keep creeping up just a bit, and as a result, you're going over the foul line just a little bit. I'd suggest that you move back just a fraction, just a little more. That's it. Take a little more time, and kind of watch that foul line, because they do take quite a bit off your score when you do that. Okay. All right, you can go now. Take a lot of time, though. Very good. That was real good. Let's take a look at the 310 on the Pindicator. Now, the 310 is a very common split. Now, the 310 is caused by hitting the 1 pin heavy, the head pin heavy, chopping right off and leaving the 310 standing. Now, there are two methods of picking that up. The most common is by going directly in between the 3 and the 10 with the ball hitting them both, thereby making the 310. Then there's also another way. You can hit the 3 pin on the left-hand side, thereby sending the 3 into the 10, and again you make it. Now, you've seen their positions on the Pindicator. Incidentally, has that Pindicator been helping them?
Oh, yes, very much.
Well, it is. It's a great help to all bowlers. Let's try it once on the alleys now with the automatic setting it up. All right, now there you have it. You see that it's on the right-hand side of the alley, and I notice you're standing on the left. That's real good.
Hope I get it.
This time you're going to. Just make up your mind. Very good, very good. You just don't know how well you're doing. But you're doing real, real well.
Watch carefully, and along with Fran, we can pick up the fine points of spot and line bowling.
We're going to go into spot and line bowling and the general conditions of the lanes. Now, you'll find when you go to different establishments throughout the country, whenever you do, or even in the city, when you go to different establishments, that the care of the alleys is always just a little different. You'll find that some alleys, your ball hooks a great deal. Other alleys, your ball runs more or less in a straight line. Now, there's reasons for this. Each particular establishment has what they call an alley man, and he may use a little different mixture in his finishes to put on the alley. So you'll also find that you have to adjust yourself on the approach in order to suit the conditions. You'll also find that many bowlers, rather than looking at the spot that I showed you, which is the second arrow, they will look at the foul line. Some of them will spot much farther down, but the spot that I gave you is about the easiest to hit. But I don't want you just to hit that arrow. I mean, that isn't all that's necessary. Actually, when you're spot bowling, you don't just hit one particular spot. You pick out one particular board and go straight down the board. Make that ball go straight down the board. Then later on, when the ball starts its revolutions, it hooks right into the pocket. Now, you notice that you have a natural hook, don't you?
Yes.
You let your ball out and your ball comes right back in. Well, that's very, very good, because most bowlers, in fact, most lady bowlers, when they start out, they have some natural tendency to turn their wrists. And when that happens, the ball backs up. And as a result, they don't get many pins, because your ball just doesn't have the momentum when it hits the pins. Then again, I've talked to you about spot bowling, and yet I have never spot bowled in my life. I bowl directly at the pins. Of course, I am one of the very few that do that. Most bowlers, I would say about 75% of the better bowlers, use a spot, but it isn't necessary. Now, your spot out there, the second arrow, I would say is about 10 boards from the right-hand side of the alley, or from the bowling lane. If you were to pick out the 10th board and roll your ball right straight down the 10th board, then if you find that the ball hits the head pin too high or too light, then you can adjust yourself accordingly. You can either move one board to the left or one board to the right, but always your 10th board is your starting board. Now, I'd like to throw a ball for you, and I'd like to show you what would happen if I were to stand in the wrong place, and then I'll give you the reason that thing happened. Unless you'd like to give me the reason. Well, let's try it. I want you to watch where I stand, where I set the ball down, and where the ball goes. Well, Fran, now that was a Brooklyn strike. As you'll notice, I hit the left-hand side of the head pin, hitting the 1-2 pocket. Now that is a strike for a left-hander, not a right-hander. Actually, it counts just as much on the scoreboard, but it's not the right place to hit it. And if you've noticed, in the American League of Bowling, very few bowlers hit on the left-hand side. And that is because they use the proper strike angle, which I did not have. Did you see where I stood?
Oh, you stood to the left.
That's over to the right.
Right, yeah.
That's right. I stood over to the right, and as a result, the ball started to roll too soon, and it got over to the wrong side of the head pin. If you pick out a spot down there, naturally, you have to stand in the same spot here each time. Because if you were to pick out a spot down there and stand over here, that means that you couldn't go straight down that board. You'd have to cross it, or you'd have to go out to it. Therefore, you would never get back up to the 1-3 pocket. I want to see you move a little bit on the approach to shoot your spares and strikes the way it should be done. All right?
This lesson should help all of us have more fun bowling, courtesy and sportsmanship.
We have a very special lesson in courtesy and sportsmanship. This is going to be very important, and for that, I have brought one of the members of the American League of Bowling, Don Ellis, to help us out. Come in, Don. How are you today?
Just fine, Lee. How are you?
Well, Fran, how are you
Hi.
today? Don, it's real nice of you to come and help us out.
Thank you, Lee.
Actually, I know you're from the state of Texas. You do a lot of bowling there. You do a lot of instructing in Houston, I believe. Huh?
That's right, down in Houston.
Well, tell me, in your travels around different tournaments and in your travels around the country, have you ever noticed anything in the line of courtesy or good sports or etiquette in bowling? Have you ever noticed anything actually different in other sections of the country?
Yes, Lee, the one big difference I've noticed in traveling down Texas way, we usually, when we're up the bowl, only wait for one bowler on each side. And then when I've started traveling, I've noticed where they wait sometimes as high as 4 and 5 alleys each way, which holds up the bowling game quite a bit.
Well, yes, that's a real good point. I think actually that's one of the major faults in bowling today. It has been abused, and as a result, the bowling proprietors just can't seem to get their leagues through in time, and it does hold up bowling. What would you say would be the proper distance away to watch when you're bowling?
Well, for myself, I think 1 alley each way is quite sufficient. Otherwise, it holds your legs up and makes you run 30, 40 minutes overtime every time.
Actually, I think that the bowler on the right has the right-of-way. I don't believe there's any written rules, but I believe that the bowler on the right has the right-of-way, and then you watch one bowler on either side. I think that's correct. Well, Don, supposing we get up, throw a few balls, and show Fran just what the method of bowling is and how you should stay in your own lane when you're bowling and really show a little sportsmanship. Is that all right with you?
That's mighty fine.
Fine. Well, Fran, as you can see, Don and I are both ready to go at the same time. Now, ordinarily, the man on the right has the right-of-way, and I have to let him know that I'm not going to go with him, so I give him the sign to go ahead. He's rolled. Now I'm ready to go. Now we're going to show you what happens when I take the right-of-way away from Don. And not only that, I'm not going to stay in my own lane, and I'm going to show you what happens. Now, Fran, you see what can happen if you don't stay in your own particular lane. Don, come on over here, will you? Is there anything that you think that you can add now that might help Fran just a little later, actually in the way of courtesy or sportsmanship?
Well, Fran, I think it's very important to be a good sport in any sport that you take up. Sportsmanship is more important than good scores, because everybody looks for a good sport.
Fran, I hope that you'll take this lesson of courtesy along with you, pass it on to your folks, pass it on to your friends, and I think in time that it'll go along enough so that courtesy will be extended throughout in the bowling establishments, which I'm sure that everybody's going to be happy about.
W-L-I-N-G. We keep rolling, rolling, rolling. My baby and me. Bowling can never be boring. We play the game like this. A spare gets a hug in scoring, and the strike is a kiss. Let's go B-O-W-L-I-N-G. We love bowling.
Thanks to all of you. Until next time, yours for better bowling. This is Sam Levine. Keep 'em rolling.